Hello, everyone. This is David Ross back with another episode, if we want to call it that, I suppose, of 5 Minutes of Word and Spirit, which is a little snippet that I do on YouTube here, where I try and combine, on the one hand, the best of the charismatic world, charismatic Pentecostal world within Christianity, where we tend to be very focused on the gifts of the Spirit, praying for healing, giving words of knowledge, words of prophecy, and also just kind of generally an experiential style faith where we're focused on encountering God through His Holy Spirit. And I try and combine that with the best of whatever you want to call it, formal academic theology. Oftentimes, these worlds are kind of at loggerheads, with one denying the validity of the other. But what I found is that when we bring them together in an informed and sensible and humble way, they both complement one another and can yield great results. So I thought today, I think this is the fourth one in this series, I talk about the whole idea of Jesus's prayer in Gethsemane and Paul's prayers, one in Galatians and one in Romans, where God is referred to as Abba, which is an Aramaic word. In charismatic circles, there's been great emphasis placed on the idea that Abba can be rightly translated as daddy. And so people, particularly Jack Frost, Jack Winter, Brennan Manning, these kinds of people have popularized this idea. And it's not just within the charismatic world, but it's gained real traction in the charismatic world. And the kind of the what makes this desirable is the idea that we can have this sort of profoundly intimate, close, affectionate, tender relationship with God, where we can refer to Him in such sort of intimate and filial terms. On the other hand, there are those in other Christian traditions, particularly I would think sort of Reformed uh, Calvinist traditions, but not only, who kind of balk at the idea of calling a holy God daddy and would kind of associate it with being sort of irreverent and lacking proper sort of piety and humility and glorification and exaltation of God in His holiness. So, where do we go with this? I myself have had experiences in my life of profound encounters with God's Father heart, as we sometimes call it. But I've wrestled with this idea: is Abba daddy or not? And what do we do with that? I've been blessed with the opportunity to do some formal theological training at various places, like here at Alberta Bible College, where I'm sitting right now. But even those of us who are engaged in ministry in a vocational or lay sense, even if we do not have the opportunity to go to Bible college or seminary, we can still make use of good, high quality resources. So, this is the Anchor Bible Dictionary, which is a little bit dated now, but a stellar resource that I would recommend. You can probably access it through a seminary library in your area. Under the entry for ABBA, the author, whose name is John Ashton, writes this, and I'm going to pick him up kind of mid-sentence here, but I think you can get the drift. He's talking about the Aramaic word Abba, or as derived from children's baby talk. So the idea that Abba should be translated daddy, has people have argued that from the idea that the word comes from children's baby talk. And then he explains this. If the last explanation were correct, that is, if Abba is baby talk, so should be translated daddy, he says, if that were right, then the use of Abba as an address to God in Mark 14:36 might be thought to imply a special, indeed a unique intimacy. And that's what I've just said, why many people find this appealing. This view was at one time held by J. Jeremias, who was a Lutheran New Testament scholar, but he later came to regard it as, quote, a piece of inadmissible naivety, end quote. Wrong as it is, it deserves mention not only because of its extensive dissemination beyond the walls of academia, but also because its influence can be detected even in the work of respectable scholars such as J.G.D. Dunn, and he goes on, and is explicit in the most recent writings of M.J. Borg. Apart from the intrinsic unlikelihood that of the idea that Jesus ever addressed God as daddy, the suggestion is ruled out of court by one important fact. Whenever Abba is found with the meaning father or my father, he goes on, it is equally employed of the fathers of grown up sons. So basically, what he's saying here is that in the Jewish literature where Abba appears, it's not only used by children and babies referring to their father. It's also used by grown-up Jewish men. To, for example, myself, I'm 34 now, and my dad is approaching 60. So what the point this Ashton is making here is that 34-year-old men don't usually make a habit of calling their earthly father daddy. And so he says that that rules out that thing in the literature says it's not baby speak, it's not daddy. However, I would push back a little bit on Ashton and say, even though I agree, because it's not restricted to being used by children in the sources that we have, it's not daddy, but I still think it's a term of endearment. And I certainly, even as a 34-year-old man, would not refer to my dad as father, which is what Ashton says it should be translated. I think father, at least in our setting nowadays in 21st century, is very formal. I don't think I've ever called my dad father. Very formal and kind of wooden. Here's another resource from Bill Nice, another respectable scholar and good resource, which is pretty easy to access. He says Abba is an Aramaic word that means father. It is a term of endearment used within the family circle, not unlike our word dad. Its degree of familiarity toward God was unknown in Judaism. And then he goes on to talk about Jesus' use of the word. So basically, I think Mounce is onto something here. Abba is certainly a term of endearment. It's not just kind of a rigid formal father. Uh, so what he suggests is that it's like dad, and I think that makes sense because in our contemporary setting, uh, both young babies and grown men or women refer to their father as dad. And it does carry this idea of familiarity and endearment. So to summarize all this, can we hold on to the idea that Abba in the New Testament calls us to an intimate, close, special, affectionate relationship with God? Yes, because it is a term of endearment. Is a good translation daddy? Is it baby speak? No, because in the literature, adult Jewish men also used it to refer to their adult fathers. It's not baby speak, it's not daddy, but it's also not a sort of formal wooden father. It is a term of endearment that indicates intimacy and a special relationship. So I would say that dad is a good option. Thanks, everyone. Again, I've called this series 5 minutes in Word and Spirit, and we're at 7 minutes 42. So either I have to change the name of the series or I have to do a better job of the timing, but I will work on that. Hope you enjoyed. Feel free to reach out to me on Facebook or your email or my website if you have comments or thoughts. Thanks, everyone. Bye.